welcome back everyone for another episode of Dollar Bin Digging. This is the video and article that I do for comicbookinvest.com where I talk about those books that are still probably tucked away in those cheap boxes, those discount bins, those dollar boxes at your LCS, half-price books, yard sales, flea markets, wherever you're doing your cheap comic book hunting. These are some titles I think you might be able to come across if you go out there digging. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's selection of books, just hang out for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, so we are going to start off with this week's comics. That's right. If you read this week's comics, there were a number of titles that featured characters and some, characters that might have been around for a little while that you can go and find their first appearances for very, very cheap, as well as some other interesting books that kind of tie into what are going on in the books that you're reading today. We're going to start over on DC and check out Justice League, the Omega Act special. So, in this special, this is kind of getting us ready for the whole KO event. You got Darkseid coming, etc. Booster Gold on the cover. And inside this book, we are brought back to a character who many think of as a movie character. And that is Ursa. The Kryptonian, the lady who came with Zod, Terrence Stamp, who unfortunately passed away recently. It was Zod, Non, and Ursa who came through in the movie Superman 2 way back in the day. We went decades without really having a comic book counterpart, but eventually they decided, you know what? Hey, why don't we bring Ursa and that Zod, into the DC universe? And they did that. And they waited all the way until 2006. During this Action Comics run by Jeff Johns decided during the Bizarro storyline, hey, let's break open the Phantom Zone and bring in the Zod, the Ursa, and the Non that we might be kind of associating with the movie. And here they are. So this would technically be her first appearance in comic books. Granted, there were like Mad magazines and other things because, again, the Superman 2 movie was decades old at this point. But in reality, in the DC comic book universe, this is where we get introduced to Ursa. And here we go. That book. Pretty cool cover, by the way. So you can also pick it up for that. None sold recently, so this isn't a book that sells a lot, but that's the whole point of what this series is all about. It's not books that are hot or books that are selling for tons of money all the time. This is something you can find for cheap, and this is a book that, even listed online, is listed for $2 up to $4. That's really it. So with that, this is the kind of thing you should be looking for. So I'm going to move on from here in the DC universe to another DC book, and we're going to take a look at this week's issue of Birds of Prey. Okay, so if you've been reading Birds of Prey recently, as I've been kind of dabbling in and out of this title over the last few months, it's just one of those things. I remember I did bring up this character here, I think a couple of weeks ago, or the last couple of episodes of Dollar Bin Digging, and that is the character of Inque. And yes, Inque has been around for a while, and Inque actually has been all the way back to, that original Batman Beyond run in the comics from the late 90s. However, that's not technically the same Inque that's in the universe now. So for fun, let's look at the reintroduced Inque, because that's pretty much the one that's actually in the comic books these days. I know we can argue semantics over different universes and multiverses and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, most people want the OG original regardless of these reinventions or redos, but just for the sake of fun and giving you another book that you can keep an eye out for, let's take a look in July of 2015 when Batman Beyond once again introduced us or reintroduced us to the character of Inque. And she's right there on the cover. And this is more of the version that we have come to, know and enjoy reading in the Birds of Prey series as of late. So there she is. Again, still kind of connecting the dots of the old to the new in this Batman Beyond series, which, again, this is not an expensive book. Not an expensive book at all. Copies sold for $2, $4. Look, there's a whole lot of the first 5 issues altogether for $6 total. That's less than $1 an issue. That's the kind of books we're talking about here, folks. Available copies, even online, $1.79, $1.75. And look at that, $2.90 for, what is that, a B cover? No, that's $2.90 for the 1 in 25 version of this book. That's right. The 1 in 25 incentive is less than $3 online. So that's the kind of cheapness we're talking about. So with that, Batman Beyond #2 would be the first new Inque, I guess, or this version of Inque. One more DC for today. This, again, isn't going to be a long show this week. I'm just going to hit up a couple of things and give you a few books there you can go dig for this weekend when we're out there hunting. But another book that I've been reading lately is Cheetah and Cheshire Rob the Justice League, because I like a good heist story. Good heist movie always is fun to watch, so why not read a nice little heist story? They're building the team out, planning to go rob the Justice League, etc. In this book, here's most of the team that they put together at this point, and they start to, gather together in their little apartment as they make their plans. But now we're getting introduced to another possibility here with Sideways, who in the DC universe is sort of I want to say a streamer, but kind of a social media type star, if you will, and with superpowers. So there's Sideways doing their little live request thing going on right now in the middle of this book. Sideways is a character that DC did try to introduce as a whole new era of superheroes that they were giving us. We had the Silencer, the Terrifics, and that, Sideways at the time as a few of the ones they were trying to give us off as new heroes in the new DC universe. And this was back in 2022. Wasn't even that long ago. But a new age of heroes, and there is Sideways being introduced in his own first issue. And yeah, he's right there on the cover, but in case you want more, right there in the panels, per pages, it's Sideways. It's obviously Sideways being introduced. So this is a book you can, again, go and find. I used to go and pick up all of these old DC Universe #1s. Definitely Silencer, because there was rumors she was going to get adapted into something. But here's one look. It sold for 99 cents. Yeah, $7 for the first 2 issues together. And then $5 got a whole run of issues 1 through 13 of this series on 2 bids. So, again, not an expensive title at all. Even copies available. Yeah, some of them are $5 to $10, but you could find it cheaper if you go out there digging and you go out there hunting. So that's kind of the idea. We'll see how far Sideways goes, and if Sideways becomes a part of the team or a bigger part of the story or even a bigger part of the DC universe. But for fun, you can go and find that first appearance for pretty cheap. Now, before we go over to the Marvel side of things, I want to remind anybody out there who needs supplies, please use my code RENNA10 over at BCW. Get yourselves 10% off your entire order. You can get your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, CGC boxes, top loaders, pages for cards, top loaders for cards, basically anything to keep your comics or collectibles safe. You can find something at BCW, and if you got to spend money on supplies, which sucks, you might as well save a few bucks while you do it. So use my code RENNA10 for 10% off the entire order. You help out the channel, you get yourself a discount. You got nothing to lose just by doing so. So with that, let's go over to Marvel and check out the latest issue of Venom, which decided to go back to legacy numbering. So here we have Venom 250. Seems like epic. What a huge run, even though this is like issue 8, or I don't even know where we're at in this current run with MJ as the new Venom. But as you can see by this cover, this will be the return of Null, which is a part of the story, albeit a small part. But the reason why I'm bringing up this book and kind of touching back in on Venom, because we've been focusing a lot on MJ and her story and her little side characters, etc. So let's give a special little nod to the man she brought back from this alternate universe when she came back, or alternate timeline, I think it was. And that's this guy right here. Everybody's favorite, Paul. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like Paul. He is kind of annoying as a character. It seems like a weird thing to kind of wedge in there just to kind of keep Peter and MJ away and apart from each other. But there's Paul. It's just Paul. So Paul Rabin, I guess that's how you would pronounce his name, with his nice little top knot man bun. Hey, I had one. I'm not going to make fun of that. But Paul, not anybody's favorite, but he's been around, and maybe they do something with him. Maybe they leverage some of that the fandom dislike and turn him into like some sort of epic villain. Maybe he takes the symbiote next after MJ passes on. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there and just saying Paul might have a role as something sometime going forward, more important than just being that dude in the way. So Amazing Spider-Man #1 from the 2022 run that started this whole thing by Zeb Wells. That would be your first appearance for Paul. And yeah, he's right here just being kind of a creeper. Granted, I really don't love the JR art these days, but it's here to stay. It's still with us. It's still with us. It's not terrible. He's still a very good storyteller. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. Everybody kind of looks the same, and not in a good way. But with that, there's your Paul. Now, this book, not very expensive either. You can see here, copies listed like $3 in lots, where you can pick your issue. Just randomness, basically. This is just random filler. Nobody really has any sort of like holding a high acclaim, this epic #1 issue of this run of Spider-Man, because we've restarted Spider-Man so many times. I think it's just desensitized us all to the idea of the Spider-Man #1 at this point. But $5 or thereabouts are also copies listed for, which is basically cover. Well, actually less than cover, because it's a $5.99 cover, because, well, it was a new #1, so they got to upcharge us just a little bit and throw a couple extra pages in there. But it is what it is. Should be used to it by now, right? We're going to move away from Amazing Spider-Man and check out what I kept reading as Spirits of Vengeance. You know, you look at the logo, you're used to saying it. I'm like, hey, Spirits of Vengeance #1, Spirits of Vengeance. I kept saying it during the Wednesday watch list. But since I do the show by myself, there was no one around to correct me. When I look at it again and say, oh, that's a Spirits of Violence. Oh, well. Spirits of Violence, though, #1 did come out this week. And, you know, if you want to read about all your favorite Ghost Riders, yeah, there's a good number of them in there, including this lady right here. So, I'm going to give you two options for her, because by now we've seen her, we've gotten to know her a little bit, but the character of Kushala, if you will, from the past, a past era version of the Spirit of Vengeance, will show her as when she first came out. She was technically called, going by the name, the Demon Rider. That was kind of like her sub name, if you will. And when she first came about, she was one of the Sorcerer Supremes in Doctor Strange and the Sorcerers, pluralized, Supreme, back in 2016. So in this storyline, we got a whole bunch of other sorcerers, etc., with Doctor Strange, but she was one of the ones who was introduced with us, Kushala, right? Okay. So this book has done well for itself over time. It's popped in and out, going up and down, etc. You can still find one when you go digging, because it's still just a Doctor Strange title after all. And yes, a #1, but copies could sell for as cheap as $1.57 with 4 bids at auction, or they could straight up sell for like $10 because it is a first appearance. Copies listed, some will weigh in and take that first appearance and note it and ask $12 for it. Others will just list it for $3.50. It's just out there. That's the point. Now, that is her first appearance. But let's look a little bit deeper into the character, because she kind of went through a little bit of a change more recently and doesn't go by the Demon Rider anymore. So Kushala now goes by a little sub-name of the Spirit Rider. What's the difference? Well, I don't know, a little bit more positive spin on things, I guess, because she is a bit not the same. She's not as somber, if you, as a normal Ghost Rider would be. She is a little bit more upbeat, a little more positive with her outlook. She's more in tune with her demon, if you will. Much so to the point where she actually ate it. I'll explain a little bit more here. In 2021, this Spirits of Vengeance Spirit Rider #1, awesome Okazaki cover here, by the way. So go grab this book just for this cover alone, for cheap if you can find it, because it's just a really cool cover. But inside the guts of this book focuses in on Kushala and dealing with her demon. Johnny Blaze is in there as well, being affected. But yeah, she straight up eats her demon, becoming one with it, and then kind of taking on more of a more neutral sort of a angle, I guess, if you will, and starts going by the name of Spirit Rider. So now this is how she became the Spirit Rider in this #1 issue. Once again, not an expensive book at all. You could find this out there selling for, $6. Yeah, there's one sold for $12. I mean, that's not too bad, right? Because this is a pretty cool cover. There are other covers involved here as well. So there's an example, one selling for $3. And then copies listed. There's another one of those covers that's only $3, 99 cents, or best offer. You could buy it straight up buy it for $2.50. Yeah, there's straight up 99-cent listed copies, but somebody paid $13. But with free deliveries. So in theory, they really only paid like $6 or $7. Copies aren't expensive, is the point. You can find this out there, get an awesome cover, and an interesting little story, and a little bit of a change of character, if you will, for Kushala becoming the Spirit Rider. Now, for our last Marvel book, we are going to stay with a new #1 and go check out White Tiger. Because, yes, Hispanic Heritage Month, we're getting a White Tiger Reborn one shot here. Also, you get some voices, stories, etc. in there as well. It's almost like an anthology. There's a couple little titles in here. Well, I think it's really only two, but two. I guess I wasn't lying. All right, well, let's look at this, because there are actually a couple of white tigers, a couple of female white tigers, because the original OG Hector Ayala, he's gone. Yes, we saw him on the Deadpool Daredevil season 2, and he is also no longer in the Marvel universe. But currently, we have this white tiger. It's on the cover, and she's also right here. And this is her current version. All right, I'm going to try to do my best to explain this, because it's a little weird, and the TV show is also going to be messing with you a little bit. So, the current white tiger who has the amulet, has the mantle, running around in the white tights with the green glow is Ava Ayala. And she is the younger sister of Hector, who was the original white tiger, the dude that we all knew, the Spectacular Spider-Man issue that everybody went and grabbed, etc. We saw it heat up again when he showed up in Daredevil. And yes, this would be his younger sister. Now, she shows up, actually the latest. She's the most current. But even though she's the younger sister, she ain't that young, I guess. I don't know. But October 2011 is when she was first introduced in Avengers Academy Fear Itself. Well, Fear Itself was the storyline of the time running through all the titles. It's not a part of the actual book here. It's just Avengers Academy number 20, but part of the Fear Itself event at the time. So, inside this book, we get introduced to a whole bunch of new Avengers that are joining this academy, etc. And no, I know you don't see her here. She's at the bottom of this panel, right at the last page splash, right down here. We see her. That's it. That's all you're getting in this book. So it's a last page cameo, if you want to call it cameo. I don't care. I'm not getting into the semantics of this, and I'm not going to show you the next issue because we don't need to know that. Yes, she follows up. She's in the next issue too. But there she is at the back end of this issue, and this one can do all right for itself. As you can see, copies can sell for $4, $8, $13.99. Some calling it out as the first appearance. And then we got copies listed $11, $20, $22. All right, this one could be a little bit pricier if you can find one of them. So keep an eye out for it. That's the current White Tiger, and in this storyline that in this one-shot issue, she faces an old villain too. So let's take a look at the villain for fun. So this is Despair. I know it's spelled all weird, but I'm pretty sure you would pronounce it Despair. And he looks kind of like a Grim Reaper, skull face, got a cape, looking a little bit like Spawn, a little bit like Nightwatch, but this is actually Despair. And he precedes all those other characters I just compared him to. So let's keep that in mind too. If anybody's stealing somebody's look, let's look at those guys before we start pointing fingers at Despair, because Despair has been around since the 70s. So with that, he actually first showed up in January. I was going to say July because I can't read the screen before it showed up. But January 1978. This is Marvel Team Up number 68. Yeah, we got a Man-Thing, we got Spider-Man, and we got some time for a new baddie. And that new baddie is looking pretty close to what he does now. This is Despair. Yes, here I am, little man. I'm Despair. Cool. I know what you're thinking. 70s book, Marvel Team Up. It's probably expensive, and it can get expensive, but not too bad. And also, condition. Depending on what condition you're looking for, you might find a well-loved copy for pretty cheap. So look here. Copies can be $10. They can be $5. They can be $15. We also got copies listed for $5 or $15. Or there's an auction starting at $1.99 with no bids. So in theory, nobody's looking, nobody bids on it. Somebody could get this for $1.99. So that's also the idea of how you can find some of these books for cheap. Just saying. So he was the baddie in the main story of that White Tiger issue. But then in the backstory of the issue, we are also brought to the other White Tiger that we all know, and that is Angela del Toro. So just to kind of reconceptualize everything, Angela del Toro was also the White Tiger, and she is this version of White Tiger, which you all might remember from back in the day, because she actually had her own series. She had a whole mini-series with those pretty awesome David Mack covers. I love looking for those individually as well. You can do well if you can find them. But she first showed up during that Daredevil run from back a little bit earlier in the 2000s, in 2004, part of the Marvel Knights run with Bendis and Maleev doing their thing. So this Del Toro version, she shows up. She's an FBI agent, and she is actually the niece of Hector Ayala, even though they're pretty close in age. It happens. I got cousins that are like the same age as me, and I got the cousins that are the exact same cousins and aunts and uncles that are the same age as each other, because it's grandma had a baby pretty close to when her oldest had a baby, kind of thing. But here we go. Angela Del Toro. She's an FBI agent in this series and is introduced just as herself. Angela Del Toro, FBI agent in this issue of Daredevil number 58. So this is her first appearance, which can go for $2.50, $4, or look, $15. Copies listed. Most of them listed are closer to that 15 with $11, $13, $18. Most of them pointing out Angela Del Toro first, also mentioning White Tiger, but she is not the White Tiger in this story. She is just an FBI agent. Now, for her to take up the mantle of the White Tiger, you got to wait a whole number of issues. That's 58. You got to go all the way to 69. This issue, also from the same run, from January 2005, is when she takes up the mantle of the White Tiger. Still no suit, mind you. But she puts on the amulet, she becomes the White Tiger, and takes it up from here. So, this would be her first as the White Tiger. And this book, again, not expensive at all. I had to struggle to find a copy that sold for $2.90 from my comic shop. Copies listed, $3, $5, $10. It's not really that expensive of a book. But now, this is the character, just to kind of bring us all back to speed here. So, Angela Del Toro was the second White Tiger. She took it from her uncle. Then she passed it on to her aunt, who is about the same age as her, I guess, in the Marvel Universe. And she is the current one. So, not the niece, but the aunt or sister of Hector is the current White Tiger in the comics. Now, in the Daredevil TV show, we were introduced to a character that would be taking the mantle of the White Tiger from Hector, since Hector was shot in Daredevil Born Again Season 1. So maybe we see her suit up in Season 2. She's still pretty young. She's a young girl. It is Angela Del Toro, though, in the storyline. That is his niece, who is actually his niece, like in this storyline. So she is still his niece. However, in the TV show credits listing, they're listing Ava Ayala as her mom, who was the third and current White Tiger, but that's where they messed things up with the TV show. Just because they wanted to use familiar character names, I think they're messing things up by taking the sister, and that's how she's the niece. But that's not how it worked in the comics. They're not related that way, not mother-daughter situation at all. It's a niece and an aunt. But in the TV show, they're kind of mixing things together, and they're kind of skipping or going back to the second White Tiger. I don't know what the hell they're doing, to be honest, with the show. But maybe we do get this version eventually. With all that out of the way and making things even more confusing, go find any of these White Tiger books. That's why I'm pointing them all out to you. So you get whichever one you like, for whatever reason you want. With that, we did Star Wars last week, so hey, let's do Star Wars again. So Star Wars number 6, Clone Warriors. Yeah, we got Luke, we got Han, we got Valance all running together. But I wanted to bring us back to Star Wars because I don't know where they're going. This is a whole new era where they're telling us new stories following, Return of the Jedi. So we're getting all new stories between then and, the sequels, the sequel series. So Force Awakens. Who knows what characters we may see in the new upcoming planned movies and other comic series, etc., which characters' profiles might expand. But a character who has actually had a pretty decent run of things so far in this new Star Wars series is this lady right here, this downed pilot that we met after the Battle of Endor in one of the other Star Wars miniseries. But this is a character goes by the name of Zenat, I guess. Zenat. X-Wing pilot, like I said, downed and found by the main crew, Leia and Luke, etc., on Endor during Star Wars, the Battle of Jakku, Insurgency Rising. So inside this story, after all the Endor stuff, like I said, we meet this pilot. And she's been sticking around. And Who knows how big a profile she might have? So this might be a book that you might want to go and find if you want to start banking in on some Star Wars characters once again. I know it's been a while since we've done Star Wars spec, but just saying. She's had a profile just kind of raised. She's running with the main crew on the Star Wars main title, so she might have a future somewhere, whether it be the comics, TV, movies, I don't know. So just pointing it out is all I'm doing. And that number one, that Battle of Jakku, which we heard over and over and over about in The Force Awakens, the sequel trilogy, they kept mentioning Jakku. Why would you want to go back to Jakku? This book, look at that, $5. Okay, sure. And then look at that, $7. $7 for a ratio lot of 6. That's 6 copies of the 1 in 25 incentive for this book that sold at auction for $7.05. Once again, that's what I'm talking about here. And then you can see copies listed. There are other variants, other covers apart from the incentive book, which sells for basically nothing. But here's the regular title, $3.50, $5. It's cover price less. That's the point. But maybe something you go and find if you go out there digging. Now, just one more for fun for this week. Yes, we did get the return of Cold Slither in comic books this week. That is the band the Dreadnoks posed as, that hair metal band from way back in the day. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. But anyway, I did get this title. I still haven't read it yet. I haven't had time to read it before doing this show, but I can't wait to read this. I know it's going to be kind of silly and dumb, but at the same time, it'll be fun. With that, Cold Slither has never actually really appeared in the comics. Like, they never actually really adapted them. They were in that episode, as I mentioned, of G.I. Joe from the 3rd season. And, you know, Cobra was trying to take over the world through music. And they came up with this band, Cold Slither. I mean, you had the Dreadnoks already. They are almost like a band, if you will. And there we go. We put them all together. They didn't really adapt this story in comics. So we can't really point to any other comics that would focus in on Cold Slither. Except back in 2012, and this is going to be an impossible find for you, but I just want to tell you about it because I think it's fun to know. This is more of a Chasing Ghost book, and I think I have covered it there. But IDW, a retailer exclusive from the JoeCon of 2015. So this was issue 212 at the time. This was like the Death of Snake Eyes stuff, and etc. It's kind of a tough book, got a little pricey already. But this variant for it had Gem and the Holograms and Cold Slither on the cover together. So there's all kinds of 80s nostalgia just coming together, all right there for you on this cover, which was a convention exclusive, not something we normally cover here on the channel. But 2015, JoeCon, this was the cover, limited to like 1,200 copies or something like that, I think it was. Pretty cool. 1,200, we think there'd be a lot more of them out there. And I really do want one. But this is a pricey book. If you go online, this is a pricey book, just so you know. Copies sold, $170, $175. Copies listed, $175 raw, $650 for a 9.8, $1,200 for a 9.8 SS, signed by Mike Zeck. And I think there might be a sketch in there too on that SS. But point being, not a cheap book. Something you're probably not finding at a dollar bin. But hey, you never know. Stranger things have happened. I don't remember where the JoeCon took place that year, but maybe if you live in a city near there, this might just be buried somewhere. This might just leaked out somewhere into the boxes and the storage lockers of yesteryear that just got farmed out to shops. They don't bother looking or digging. It's just buried in there. Who knows? Who knows where the extras might have gone? But I thought it was fun to bring up and thought it was fun to kind of point it out and talk about it since we got Cold Slither, the comic, coming out this week. So with that, I just want to say thanks for stopping by and checking this out. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. As I said, it helps. Your engagement helps. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about books. And let me know if you find any of these things. And let me know some of the best books you found when you're out there dollar bin digging, etc. So with all of that, I'm still having fun doing this. Plenty more content coming your way. And I will see you all later. All right.